Hi, and welcome to the Animal Training Academy podcast show, the show for animal training and behavior nerds, where I, Ryan Cartlidge, interview the world's most proficient animal training and behavior geeks. We're absolutely thrilled and grateful to have you here with us today. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on whatever you're listening to this on so that you don't miss a single episode. Each episode of this show is brought to you on behalf of the ATA membership. And if you like the conversations in this episode, then you're invited to continue them with like-minded behavior nerds within the membership area, which you can find out more about at www.animaltrainingacademy.com. You'll get access to twice monthly live web classes, the back catalogue of previous web class replays, plus a huge library of videos and projects to help problem solve your training challenges. Plus, we're a sociable bunch with an exclusive private Facebook group and forum areas. It's like a Netflix social media platform for animal behavior geeks.
Hello, awesome and admirable ATA community. We have a turn of the tables today to celebrate ATA's 150th podcast anniversary. And I could not be more excited than to be the stand-in for Ryan, who will interview him and hopefully ask every question you've ever wanted answered by the man who really had the courage and the vision to develop this organization as he has for all of us to continue teaching and learning. Hello, Ryan.
Hey, Susan, thank you for being our 150th special host and for having this idea to flip the tables and have Susan and Ryan, what did we call our last episode? On the perch? I can't even remember.
Could have been off the perch.
Off the perch.
We're pretty much off the perch, people.
Part two in reverse. So grateful to you for...
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. I have this gigantic smile like I'm absolutely suppressing hilarious giggles because I don't know why this strikes me as really funny. Maybe because I do so many interviews in a year. Some I'm very happy with, others I'm not happy with. How often are you interviewed?
I'd say I've been on a number of podcast shows now, so a couple of times a year. We jump on other podcasts. I caught up with Melissa B from the Fenzi podcast show this morning, and her and I are really recording a ATA episode and a Fenzi episode at the end of June, / July, so it might be out by the time this one comes out. And get to present at conferences and stuff, but interviewed. I think people are really fascinated in Animal Training Academy and how this organization got started and where it came from and why. And so I get asked that a lot, and I've shared that story many times.
Why you moved to that direction. Yeah. Well, I'm hoping to ask some questions you haven't answered a million times so that will really catch you off the perch. So I want to tell you that if there's any question I ask that you don't feel comfortable answering, just say pass, and I'll move on to the next question.
Yeah,
okay?
Well, I'm being brave today and being interviewed by you. You've been such a huge inspiration to me. If someone told me 7 years ago that I'd be interviewed by Susan Friedman on my own podcast show on number 150, I'd be like, what does that even mean?
Right. How do we even get there from here? Me too. Okay, let's give that pass idea a go. Tell me who most annoys you in our field.
Who most annoys me?
Remember, you can say pass. I was giving you an opportunity.
I don't want to say
you
pass.
You don't want to? Oh my gosh, you really are brave. Well, let us know. Who is that person?
Susan Friedman.
I deserve that.
There's some for setting the bar so high. I remember you messaged me a few days ago and you said, sorry for my late reply, Ryan. And it was 24 hours after I emailed you. And I'm like, hang on. That's faster than so many. So if I was to compete against myself and to try and, because I see so much value in getting fast responses from you. and I know that you care about me, and you care about and you value me, and I'm important when I get those fast responses. I'm annoyed that I haven't facilitated my antecedents and my environment to be in the same position to know how to do that. So you are the most annoying person to me.
Well played, Ryan Cartlidge. Well played. Yeah, when you understand how behavior works, it comes with great liberation because you're able to understand and predict and change behavior, your own as well as others. But it also comes with a responsibility. So knowing that when someone sends me an email, part of the reinforcer for communicating with me is getting a response back. I try and respond as quickly as possible to reinforce the communication. So that's
annoying.
the responsibility. But it's very annoying. And we're also in different phases of life. And that's a good lesson too, is I never assume that what you can do that I haven't mastered is because I'm unable, but rather that our genetic tendencies, our learning history, and our current conditions are different. And that if I had all that the same as you, I'd be doing what you're doing too. So that's part of the liberation part. Yeah. Well, let's have time be our great organizer for the interview. And let's start way back when you were a boy. What is your earliest memory?
My earliest memories, I don't know if they are memories, because one thing that we've always had in my family is a camcorder. Now, it wasn't an iPhone 12 that fits in your pocket when I was a kid. It was the thing the size of a VCR player that you put on your shoulder. And you had
a big looking thing.
Yeah, and you had to look through the viewfinder to this tiny little black and white screen.
Yes, I remember.
And it recorded onto a physical, small-looking VCR type tape. And so I have these, luckily, opportunities to remember earlier than I can remember. And I have memories of me when I was Summer's age, maybe a little bit older than that. So I have these memories that aren't memories, but I was just thinking about it yesterday as I watched Summer become fascinated by a piece of fluff on the ground and stop everything to lean down and investigate. And I have video of me doing that.
Oh, wow.
Of a little something gunky stuck to our kitchen floor, and my mum or dad was just filming me, absolutely fascinated in this.
Exploring and the natural world. Yeah,
so
natural curiosity.
So I'd say, without it being an actual memory, that I have these memories.
It's just hard to know. They're memories of memories. I have those as well. I don't know whether they're memories of my own or if they're memories of photographs and movie pictures as well.
And I think about Summer now, like we got photographs, obviously, and you had to get them developed at the photo shop. And we've got these, most people didn't have camcorders. We had a camcorder. We always had a camcorder. And I wonder if that influenced my journey with ATA, because I loved our camcorder. And when I left home, I brought my own camcorder. And I was always, embarrassingly, wifey watched a video of me going on a road trip around New Zealand with my mates when I was like 18 and 19, and it's horrendous. No one's ever going to see it outside of this family. I'm not that brave.
I was going to say, you've got our curiosity perked, and so maybe on our 160th anniversary turn the table interview, you can show some of that video. Maybe you'll be brave enough by then.
My bravery
So
grows.
you remember exploring gunk on the floor, which is pretty cool. Did you have pets as a young child?
You'd think so, eh? But my family wasn't that into having pets, so I begged literally for a dog when I was young, and after observing the direction my life has taken, it's been expressed to me that one of the biggest regrets from my childhood is not giving me that opportunity. But a family pet was something that wasn't prioritised in our life at that time, so I never was short of wanting animals. We had some goldfish. We had some mice.
They're great. Mice. We've had mice as pets when I was raising the girls too. Beautiful little animals and great learners, huh?
Yeah, and it was just me and the animals, and no, not much knowledge or information or guidance as to how to help these animals enjoy and have a good life. So
To thrive.
I would say that as many people who reflect back on their early experiences with animals might share similarities with, am not super proud, but also grateful for being able to reflect on that now.
Absolutely. We're always changing and growing towards a more humane world. It seems to me that if we watch the trajectory of some key things, we're not nearly where we wish to be, but we're not where we were either. And I can definitely point to specifics in my lifetime. So you got to be careful of that what if game, though, because not having the dog or the cat or the pony might have been the critical motivating operation you needed to be able to live a life steeped in animal training now and care now.
Yeah, well, I contemplate a journey that's been shared many times on the Animal Training Academy podcast show, and that is I had animals and I went to the local animal class and I learned adversive strategies and they weren't working, and then I read Don't Shoot the Dog, and then I got a really challenging animal and I had to learn better. I feel that is a common path and one that I feel has tremendous value for the people who have traveled it. And for me, I feel lucky that I get to learn from everyone's experiences, and at the same time, I never went down that path. I just jumped straight into the positive reinforcement community.
So you didn't start with a path of aversive training strategies?
I unintentionally did with my parrot.
I see.
During university, but there wasn't any. I wasn't focused enough as a young man to explore alternative strategies. I found some aversive strategies that worked, and not knowing any better or the detriments of what I was doing, I employed them. But I did learn. I had I shared in the International Association of Avian Trainers and Educators, the IATA conference, about Harry the lorikeet and observing
yes, I recall.
When my very good friend Vincent Bennett, who was also my best man, I've known since university, who lived with us, who didn't employ those strategies with our parrot, and Harry loved him, and Harry would gravitate towards him. He was the provider of predictable and pleasant events, and so my curiosity was tweaked at that very initial stage. That might have annoyed me as a young man.
Right.
Answering your question from earlier, I didn't understand exactly what was happening. I could just observe behavior and start to
wonder.
Pick out the differences. Yeah,
That's cool.
And so,
did you grow up with siblings?
I have a sister who is a couple years older than me, and we were close. We spent all our school holidays. I got fond memories of playing board games with her all school holidays, and she also still lives just down the road from me, and I've got two nephews from her and her husband. So, yeah.
And do they have children?
Yeah, so she's got two young boys. So I'm Uncle Ryan a couple of times.
Uncle Ryan, and she's an auntie for Summer J.
Yeah, it was challenging when COVID hit. That we went into lockdown straight after, so someone didn't get to meet her for quite a while, but we get to hang out regularly now.
Yeah, make up for lost time. That's a pleasure. And when did you realize that you loved animals? Was that a childhood thing, even though you didn't have your own dog or cat or pony?
I think some of my other earliest memories, and we got this on video as well, was watching wildlife documentaries, and the specific ones that really resonated with me and just captivated my attention were ones that had a story narrative to them. So there was a storyteller talking about the family of lions,
Right.
And I would run around, and I remember vividly just pretending to be a lion and just obsessed with this. And so that's a memory that often flashes in my current adult life in my brain. I remember watching those, and I'm still, every time I watch a wildlife documentary now, I get those nice feelings that I had as a child watching those. But I think my fascination more turned towards the natural world and biology when I was at university. And I remember as a 15, 16-year-old, I was dealing with identity and my changing body and figuring out who I was, and focused on important things like being popular and friends and girls. And
looking fine.
And I remember I was studying for one of our exams as a 15, 16-year-old here in New Zealand. And I was challenged with just being a teenager and what that meant. And I was reading about protein synthesis in cell biology. And I just had an epiphany at that age. I was reading about these. I can't even recall it to you now. I could have told you exactly what happened in the whole process of protein synthesis when I was 16 years old, but it's kind of left my memory now. But proteins or particles coming up to a cell and hitting a receptor and then being absorbed into the cell and then going down to the mitochondrial DNA and then being interacting with the RNA and replicating to a protein and then going back up to the cell surface and then exiting the cell again via these receptors. And it just blew my mind as a 15-year-old. I was like, hang on, wait, what? Like, this is happening in a cell that we can't even see.
It is mind-blowing.
Well, it just made me go, hang on, I'm worried about what I look like and, like,
good for
if
you.
I'm popular and this, and, like, I'm calling that life, but this is life. Like, and its purpose is to replicate. And I thought, hang on, like, I can't see that thing, but that's like a whole world in and of itself. And I'm made up of trillions of those things.
That's right.
And I was like, what? So what is, as a 15-year-old, I was like, what is life? Like, and I stopped, like, it was kind of, had its pros and cons, but as a young man, I stopped caring about all of that stuff. And I became obsessed with the fact that life wasn't actually all these things that we think we are, this narrative that we tell ourselves in the society that we live in. And I think that was the most pivotal moment in my entire life, potentially. Overnight, I kind of just shifted my whole paradigm. Like, I carry that with me till today. It never leaves my consciousness that all of these things we talk about, politics, COVID's a different kind of ball game to that because it is a real biological, down to the molecular level. That's engaging with that other world. But even my friendships, everything, I love it all. I'm so grateful for it. But there's this other, like, life happening.
It's sort of about scale, isn't it? The self-concern is that narrow scale. And when you start to learn more about all the different things out there on this planet, from the entire, universe under an ocean to the entire universe cellular-wise. I mean, there are studies of early operant conditioners conditioning single neurons with consequences, right? Selecting single neuronal behavior with consequences. I mean, it is really phenomenal, and it's about opening up to the bigger scale of what's going on around you. I think that's pretty darn good. Most of us don't stop being overly concerned about our own popularity and instead being focused on the big scale picture until we're 66. So I think you were pretty far ahead of the game on that. And it shows your wonder about the world and the people that you interview and facilitate. And it shows that you're a person who's living with this constant awe, which is a beautiful way to live.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've figured it out well, better than I did then. I think I went to the point of not caring too much as a young man. But I'm grateful for that. I think that allowed me to really find who I was and grow in my confidence and self-belief about what I'm doing. And but that was something that just triggered my interest in biology and the natural world, which has ended up currently in 2021 and working with Behaviour and Animal Training Academy. And that's kind of just what's followed from that young Ryan in high school, and then going on to get a bachelor's degree in biology and starting to volunteer with zoological organisations, and it's led us to here.
How did you go from biology to zoology? Because there were many, many different applications from a biologist's point of view. It could have been plants and flowers. It could have been brains and guts and cells. So how did you get from biology to zoology?
I think another thing that happened in high school was sitting at a computer, whatever they were like back in the 90s, and filling out some questionnaire which was meant to tell you kind of what career path was good for you. And I remember I got told that I was going to be a builder. And I love building things. I mean, our house is a giant enclosure. It's got multiple catios attached to it and tunnels going down the side. And
I've seen, you gave me a video tour. I'm sure people would be very interested in seeing your catios too sometime.
And I love doing stuff with my hands. And I think if this wasn't the career that I went down, that's quite possible that that's something that I would have explored. There have been times due to trying to figure out how to eventually provide for a family where I've considered switching.
Bringing that back in.
But I remember my friend next to me got the result that he's now a chef. But he got the result that he was going to be a zookeeper. And I went, oh my God, that is what I want to do. I want to. And so from then I kind of became focused on working in the zoological industry. But when I left university, my antecedents, I think, just pushed me in that direction. My friends were going to universities. I can't speak for my parents, but I feel there was an expectation that tertiary education was my next logical step. Without any reason other than not having anything else to do and not really knowing what to do at that time. And I enrolled in university and stuck with it till the end. Most of that degree was in ecology.
Not in wildlife or zoology at that point?
Well, once again, I didn't look for that opportunity. I just went to university in my hometown with my mates.
Right.
And I enjoyed...
But, that's an important thing, too. I always tell young folks who are trying to decide what to do next, do anything. Just don't do nothing, Keep that momentum going. And even if you pick an area that is not going to be your ultimate area, your ultimate love or work, don't let roots grow around your feet, because once those roots grow, it becomes harder and harder to get free of them. So it sounds like you were of that model, and I was too, that you didn't have, a lifelong passion. I grew up with a little girl who ended up being a neurosurgeon. And she knew she wanted to be a neurosurgeon all through our childhood. She would always, play the brain doctor. Phenomenal. But I wasn't that way either. I was just sort of standing by the bank, picking up what happened to float by and moving with it. So you did the same thing. You didn't have a clear picture of your passion, but you didn't let roots grow either.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I learned from university, I was fascinated in the subject. I didn't have to try to kind of be motivated to learn about all of the things to do with the natural world, or I did cell biology papers as well and didn't go down the molecular pathway. I stayed on the ecology path. I can't remember what decisions led to that, but I think one of the biggest things I learned was just sticking with something. That was a 3.5 years it took me. And that was a significant chunk of time to invest in something like that. Something I've always done is been able to figure out how to do what's required to meet a goal. I've got a degree in biology, but 19, 20-year-old Ryan wasn't that interested in reading scientific papers and learning how to write them. So I figured out very early in that degree that I just had to do a good introduction and do a good discussion, because that's where the majority of the marks were, and it didn't really have to worry about statistics or the results.
You weren't my student.
I could wing.
Good thing.
Well, that got me past. So I kind of went, okay, cool, what's required? How do I do it? And I made it work for me, and I stuck with it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I learned. Because as soon as I finished that, I went abroad for a year. I went and lived in South Korea for a year. But then
the whole family did.
no, just me.
Just you.
As soon as I finished university, I thought I want to go somewhere where I don't understand the language, I don't understand the culture, and just live in that space to kind of appreciate something completely different than what I know. But then as soon as that finished, as soon as that year was up, I was just straight into the zoo industry. And I've always gone, I didn't need to go to university to be doing this. So I kind of reflect on that, and I'm grateful I did it. It taught me a lot.
That's right.
But yeah, like you, I was just standing on the bank, just picking up what was floating by until I was mature enough.
Right.
I always feel like I went for zoo jobs before I left New Zealand. Back in New Zealand now, but I left for many years. I wouldn't have hired me when I was young. I was unfocused, immature, a little bit arrogant, so I'm grateful I didn't get any of those positions though, because otherwise I might not have travelled and I might not have be doing this today.
And did you say that you were out of New Zealand for many years?
I went to South Korea for a year, then I lived in Australia for 3 years, I believe. Then I went to Canada for a year. Then I moved back to Australia for a while. And then I moved back to New Zealand in 2011. So I've been back here for a decade. Wow.
So 2011, yeah. Yeah, time is flying by, that's for sure. And what motivated you to do that traveling? I hear that that's where you feel you really grew up in many ways. You grew the maturity, you dropped some of the arrogance, you started to focus. What was your goal? Or maybe what were you escaping by traveling? We have to think of both positive and negative reinforcement, right?
Yeah, I think I was probably escaping New Zealand. I was just a little bit, just wanted to be away from home and away from everything I knew and see the big wide world. Yeah. I never thought I'd live in New Zealand again, but maybe what I was escaping brought me back here eventually.
And what would that be?
Family, I think. My values changed. When I was young, I kind of wanted to go be an independent young man and stand up by myself and not be able to lean on anyone, be completely by myself and have to figure it out. And I couldn't do that in Wellington, I don't think.
Yeah, you had to test your wings. Like when we teach a bird to voluntarily, comfortably go into a crate by keeping the door open. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I always had that open crate. I always was an email away from money or help or anything I needed, no matter where I was in the world.
That support from your family.
Yeah. But then my family originally, eventually brought me back to New Zealand to be with them in times of need.
Yeah. And it's interesting that the work you're succeeding at now really has no nation borders. You're just working all over the world through the internet, even though your body is in New Zealand.
Yeah, and my daughter and the antecedents that I want to have my daughter in.
Part of a family.
Part of a family, part of living in a society under the current government of New Zealand, part of the safety that I knew growing up. That's shifted since I was a child, but compared to a lot of parts of the world, it is a very safe, very friendly, very left liberal community.
I know exactly what you mean. We lived in Africa for 5 years and came back when the older daughter was 6 and the younger was 3. And part of the motivation to come back was wanting them to be American. I wanted them to reflect the culture I had grown up in, for better and worse, but mostly for better from my point of view. And so, I brought them back. Neil and I did at that point for a very similar kind of vision of what their lives would be like, that they could have a place to plant their feet, even if they didn't choose to stay here when they got to an age where they could choose to go back to Africa or some other nation. Yeah.
Well, I think my wifey from the UK finds it odd that her child's going to have a New Zealand accent. But
it is odd when they don't reflect you, because I had children reflecting back a Southern African, a Basutu English accent, which was more British than it was American by far. And not knowing who Mickey Mouse was, never in my life did I imagine Mickey Mouse would have any value in my parenting trajectory, But there I was thinking, I think I want them to know our culture. So I didn't realize that she was from the UK. Tell us a little bit about Sapphire's background.
Well, she grew up in Bristol in the UK. Her mum raised her and her grandparents raised her, and she left there. Same as me, she wanted to go out and explore and spread her wings and be independent. And she landed in New Zealand in 2013, and a week later I stopped her in the street and told her I thought she was good looking.
See, that's why I said your travels helped you lose some of the arrogance. Because if you didn't have some back, you would never have talked to Sapphire. And the rest is history. Good for you.
And then, the rest is history. Now we've got a house and a child and dog and 2 cats. And
do you go back often to the UK to visit her family?
I've never been back. We've never, pre-COVID, had the financial stability to get both of us back there. So we've always utilised what savings we had to get her home. But her family's been over here numerous times. Her mum was here just before we went into lockdown. So she was meant to come for 2 months, but she stayed for 6.
Wow.
So the beginning of Summer's life, we had a lot of help and support, and I think she was very grateful that she was stuck in New Zealand.
And how wonderful for Summer. She might only have memories from video, but those foundations are inside her cells.
Well, I was going to say that earlier. I mean, we had a camcorder, but God, there's so many images and videos of Summer, like we were recording her life.
And it'll have an impact on these kids. I wish that I had the cell phone video potential when I was raising our girls in Africa. That would have been most extraordinary. But I try and be thankful for what we do have, which did come from a camcorder, just as you described. So tell us how you got from there to ATA. You came back from your travels in 2011. You met Sapphire in 2013-ish.
Yeah, I think.
Fill me in there.
From there, well, I mean, going back further than that, after I got to Australia from South Korea, I started volunteering at Rockhampton Zoo in central Queensland, and met some folks who helped me start on my what is an Australian certification in captive animal management. Partway through, I moved up to Cairns in tropical North Queensland. I remember going there earlier and seeing this bird called Reg, the wedge-tailed eagle, fly 20 centimetres above my head, and was just gobsmacked. And then an opportunity came to work in that space, and I was lucky I was successful in that application, and I worked there for a couple of years. Reg was a bird whom had sent people to hospital before. He'd knocked someone out by flying at them and hitting them with his leg. And he's a bird that I could work with in a setting where we had him out in front of visitors to the zoo, and we were flying him around, and he would participate in the behaviours, his trained behaviours in that setting. But then going into his holding space, he would do behaviours I'd label as aggressive. He would fly at my face with his talons and make a lot of vocalizations and a lot of movement, seemingly not wanting me in that area. And I had no idea about positive reinforcement. I was told to use more aversive strategies.
Didn't know to ask what's the function.
You didn't ask to know what's the function, but very clearly saw this isn't doing anything. Like, I don't feel comfortable with this. Like, it's like there's some TV shows where you can see a trainer working with some animals, and we know that the contingencies are using aversives, and you can see owners of the animals in the background. Like, you can predict from their facial expressions and hypothesize how they're feeling about watching what's happening.
Right.
So I was that. I was doing these things myself, going, this doesn't feel right.
But being aware it didn't feel right. And yet not knowing what to do.
Not knowing what to do and not knowing, but also just knowing it's not working. This isn't working. Like, we've been doing this for a month and there's been no change. And so I travelled. I went to Taronga Zoo in Sydney. I met Peter Clark. I met Nick Bishop. And was shown intense kindness without seeking any mentoring or anything. I got it. I received it. Specifically from Nick, who would call me up and see how I was going and take the challenge to his team at Taronga and ring me back up with solutions. And he coached me through training Reg to the point where I could enter his holding space and walk up to Reg, and Reg would voluntarily step on my gloves and let me play with his feet. All using.
So we owe an extraordinary debt to Nick Bishop and Peter Clark. Worth taking a moment to enjoy.
Absolutely.
They've influenced so many people.
And Peter Clark and I have reconnected over the recent years through ATA. Nick's been one of my closest friends since then. We call him family. He's probably closer to Sapphire now than he is to me. I think they talk nearly daily. And he's someone whom, when I speak to him, I leave the conversation knowing more about myself than when I started. Like, he will tell me things about myself that I don't even. I've got a few friends like that, and so I value any opportunity to talk with Nick, and always come. He's taught me so much. He's given me valuable feedback. Not always the feedback.
Not always very rewarding. Yeah,
but I've always listened to it, and it's really when I've implemented his suggestions, they've always taken me in beneficial directions for my own personal and professional growth. When I get into a sticky situation in life and I message him, he will jump on the phone immediately if needed. So yeah, he's been one of my and continues to be one of my best friends and biggest mentors.
Can you think of something that you learned when you got on the phone, or some hard communication he gave you that was important?
When I first started Animal Training Academy, I presented it at a conference, and it was a bit markety, my presentation. And he said, and he provided feedback about how I might modify some aspects of my presentation to
tone that down a little bit and let people see your profound love for the natural world and not have that be eclipsed by the need to sell something.
And just give value. I think, from that experience, I got lots of business from a business perspective. The marketing worked, but what I've learned over the years is that the strategy of just giving value purely, is more of a it has the same effect. It brings, from a business perspective, it brings business. Animal Training Academy is based on value, but it has to put bread on our table as well. I couldn't do this for free, unfortunately. And it's got longevity. It builds relationships. It just puts massive deposits in trust accounts. So that was a big learning experience for me, and a huge a challenging bit of feedback to give someone potentially. But I knew, because we have such a high trust account, that it was 100% given with love and compassion and caring.
Right. I think that operationalizes among humans what a trust account is made of. It's made of the data, the experience that the other person who's giving you the hard feedback has your best interest truly at heart. And then what wouldn't we be able to listen to if we knew that to be the case? That the only reason why the person is giving us this hard feedback is because they care about us. That opens you really wide to hearing what they have to say. And I think Nick's sincerity and authenticity predisposes all of us to trust that he has our best interest at heart. And that's one of his superpowers, really, is conveying that to all of us. So, yeah. I often say that to organize that idea that you had about where does marketing fit in, you need to eat, but you don't need to be like a door-to-door salesman with your wares, in your case. I remind myself that we've got 3 goals. One is to do good. That's the first one, is just to do good. And the second one is to make money. And the third one is to leave a legacy so that the good you've done continues to flow even when you're not there to do it. And those 3 for me have really helped me navigate the parameters of marketing versus working for free, working for pay, training others so that I can leave the legacy. If you keep your eyes on those 3 things, it served me very well. It sort of covers the goals in a well-lived lifetime, is to just do good, make money so you can eat, and so that you can also work for free when you need to, and leave a legacy, train others, move it out. Don't just keep it with you. So I share that with you in case that's a way of packaging sort of Nick's advice. Yeah.
Well, I think the I'm working on the legacy part right now. I'm still young, so I've got time. The marketing side of things, the presentation I'm thinking about, it had immediate results with regards to marketing potential, but I've learned something over the last 6 months that I could only learn after having done ATA for 5 years, is that we've built a brand new platform, a brand new website. We've switched pricing models a little bit, and we just communicated that to our audience. This is happening. And we had an influx of new members at that time. And this was different than any other influx of new members we've had, in so much as the feedback I got was consistent and repetitive about how these new members had been listening to our podcast show for years. So now I make the content because, I mean, there's so many reinforcers for making this content. I mean, I get to just do this. This is fun in and of itself. I'm not thinking about anything else when I'm making a podcast. I'm just having fun.
Yeah. Right.
And the cool thing about that is that's just marketing. And then we're just giving that value out. And so I think Nick's advice was wise, and and I applied it, and I've learned from it, and that it serves everyone better, I think.
Yeah. You can't ask for people to care more about what you're offering than you do. So conveying the depth of caring about your subject and what you're teaching others is sort of basic to being able to do good, make money, and leave a legacy. Yeah. I do see Phoebe in your lap. Tell us about Phoebe. How did you come by this family member?
Phoebe was being advertised on Facebook for sale. Had an 8-month-old puppy. We knew we were looking for a dog, and Sapphire pointed this animal out to us. So we went down to the house where these people were selling her, and these people had Phoebe. They had a Rottweiler. They had a Staffy. There was numerous kids living there, cats roaming around. We went in their lounge. There was TV stacked to the ceiling. And these people we noticed on Facebook after we bought Phoebe off them. And we noticed they changed their names. They were constantly offering animals.
Scary, huh?
Yeah. So what was Phoebe's life like for the first 8 months? No idea. We don't know where she came from. I remember getting her home. She was very skinny. She just ran around our lounge in circles. Took her to the park. She just ran. And then she just started to form some reactivity to certain cues, sounds coming from outside, to the point that I remember I couldn't engage with her. She was so fixated on these external sounds and barking and panting and running, and so there was a challenging time. I just kind of left the zoo industry and was starting ATA, and we've come so far with her now. We couldn't have guests over really then without her being on the other side of the house, to the point that I couldn't communicate with her. Now she loves guests, seemingly. Well, it's funny, like, we had guests over the other day, and for the first time I think ever, like, I forgot to be very conscious of where Phoebe was. Yeah,
that's a milestone.
Yeah, when your problems change, you're probably making progress, I think. Erica F. Furubaka said that on our podcast show. And so I went in the lounge, and Phoebe sat on the couch with our friend's daughter, looking what one might label as calm. But my friend, the young girl, she's about 11, I think, she had her hand on Phoebe, and she said, "Why is her heart beating so fast?"
Oh, good observation.
Yeah, so ideally, I think we would have Phoebe's heart a little bit more slow in those situations. But observably, from what I could see, I mean, huge changes. Our problems are different now. I think we've made huge progress. And adding summer to the household, things are shifting consistently. I think all of our animals are figuring out new contingencies and distant antecedents with regards to the amount of attention they can access within any 24-hour period.
Yeah, Summer J and COVID, I'm sure, has changed their lifestyles radically.
Yeah, but we're constantly changing. I think I told you last time we talked last month that I was modifying the fencing on the front of our property. We've got 50 metres of fencing, so I'm making it unscalable for our cats. And I've started that process. I've done 12 metres of fencing. I've spent probably 15 hours chopping down branches along the perimeter and mulching that all up. So we're constantly just trying to modify our environment, and that means we can take Tilo outside, one of our cats, and we can use one of her favourite hunting toys in a big open space that's not full of furniture and child toys. So we take her out there 5 times a week now, and she gets to hunt wonderful. Like a cat.
Yeah.
And run around, but ideally we want them to be able to go out there unsupervised and know that we can ensure their safety, and they're not going to jump the fence and end up on a road or with some of the other neighbourhood cats. So it's been changing a lot, but as do we.
Absolutely. That's the one constant, right, is change. Some of it we seek and manufacture with our own behavior, and some of it we take on because it's just sort of coming down that stream on the bank we're standing on, and we can take it all. Absolutely. We have a summer aviary that's made of mesh for the parrots, and we invested in a winter aviary 2 Thanksgivings ago. I think I mentioned to you that I had a bunch of people over for Thanksgiving weekend, and led by Wouter Stallard and Fung Lu, I was musing about wishing for a winter aviary. And so they said, well, we can do that now. And they did. And just watching the patterns change in the bird's behavior, being able to go outside 12 months a year. I mean, it's not very different from the cat situation you're describing, or at least there are some significant similarities. Space is so important. And of course, that recognition is influencing our zoo enclosures now as well. So, yeah, that's wonderful that you're putting that effort in. And it's been amazing for me to see their behavior change given that bigger world of having 12 months a year in aviaries instead of in living rooms.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been a constant because our cats are house cats adoption that we're trying to best utilise our space. Right in front of me, in front of my desk right now, is a bunch of cat hiding holes because one of our cats loves to spend all day in tight spots. So we bought her those, and we're about to modify our entire garage and turn it into another cat area and figuring out how to best heat that and make that as reinforcing for her so we can see if we can encourage her to use that space more, which frees up our lounge to be less supervisory and conscious of where everyone is.
Yeah. And it's so similar to the goals we have when we work at zoos, is how can we create spaces kind of like intensive gardening, where you get all of this wonderful outcome from a very small gardening space because you enrich the soil and so forth and so on. They'll maximize the light, maximize the water, is how can we create that for animals in human care? Yeah, and zoos is the same kind of effort that you're describing at home and that I did with the parrots at home.
I think whoever ends up buying this house is going to wonder why there's a cat flap in an elevated window in the master bedroom.
That's right. And all these catios. Well, it's wonderful. They'll understand it, and hopefully you'll sell it to someone who provides the same for their cats.
Oh, last time sorry, go on.
No, you tell me.
I was just saying, last house we sold, we had to get a bridging loan so we could buy this house, move the animals and dismantle all of the enclosure on the other house and then put that on the market. So
There you go.
no one ever saw the catios, and it cost us an arm and leg to ensure that
Yeah.
it wasn't
Yeah.
confusing for buyers, and our animals didn't have a stressful period.
I was going to ask you, where do you see yourself being in 10 years, given the incredible, effortful, and fortunate path that brought you to this moment right now? Where do you see yourself going or landing in 10 years?
Let's say 3 years.
Is 10 too big of a time for you?
No, but 3 years is a more thought out current time frame for me with regards to ATA, and that is within 3 years have ATA to a level where I can step away completely. I don't want to, I don't plan to, but I want to be able to. Because learning how to run a business and scale a business and make it sustainable is very different than just wanting to share information about positive reinforcement. To do that we had the potential, I think, to reach and help a lot more learners. The end users are Phoebe Dog and people's and animals of our members' clients. They're the end users. And all the ripples that flow from the interactions those clients then have with their friends and family when they see their animals being trained. But for us as a family, that's great. But I'm also a husband and a father and a son and a friend. And to create that world, there are costs. A cost is I can't currently go on holiday without it there being what I would label as detrimental effects on our business.
Yeah.
There's a line we want to cross where the business isn't running us so much as we're running it.
I hear you. Yeah.
And I don't know how to do any of this. I never learned how to do any of this. So we want to be able to go back to UK, and I want to be present with Summer's great-grandparents, not watching my phone all the time.
Yes.
So that is a big, huge goal, and we want to achieve that within a short time frame because they're getting older and Summer's growing up fast, and we don't want them to miss any of that. And we want the flexibility to do that without it being detrimental in any way to what we've built, and more so making it even better what we've built. So we've got Rose now on board, and we're going to be building that team, and we've got Veronica Butelli helping us out.
Yeah, she's amazing to bring that business knowledge that you feel you're lacking.
And so I'm confident in that. I'm confident in that goal. And then in 10 years, me and wifey had this conversation last night because Veronica's asking me those questions too. Like, what am I helping you build? Like, what do you want? Whether Summer has siblings in 10 years or not, I'm not sure. What other kind of income we get as a family to build that security, I'm not sure. There's a lot of what ifs. But one thing that comes to mind when you ask that question is standing in a temple, big shrine thing in Thailand in 2017 when me and Sapphire went over there to get married, looking out at watching a plane flying across the sky, boats in the water, black smoke billowing from them, and seeing all of the stray dogs running around, skinny, and going, man, look at these problems.
That's right.
And I think about Animal Training Academy, and I think we're solving challenges. But I also see there and see that these what seem like significant challenges, and we went and visited a shelter there, and there was 400 dogs in this shelter, just all in these big open areas.
Hard to see.
But people doing amazing things, and we managed to take something for them as well and contribute to that particular shelter. But I see I don't know where that thought's taking me, but I have a feeling I can do something bigger, and I don't know if that's an accurate way of saying that.
I understand what you mean.
But have you talk about that legacy, like what can we?
That's right.
How can we bounce off ATA to help even more and solve some problems? I think, and And then wifey's just finished her social work degree just before Summer was born. So we've always dreamed about how we can combine our two. And so we're both carers. And I know she wants to work with youth, and she's fantastic. Working with people in need, and whenever we're at parties, she always leaves. She's like, "How did I get stuck talking to that person in the corner?"
Oh, I can relate to that.
They gravitate
the
to
lightning rod role. Yeah.
And so we've got members who work with troubled youth and horses and dogs, and that's something that maybe we might explore in the future.
So ATA for you is the contribution that you've been able to create for this block of time. And as you continue to grow it, you're also starting to look beyond it to see what the next steps might be. And since every problem on the planet is ultimately a behavior problem of someone's in some way, it tracks back to human behavior. Everything that you learn in doing ATA is going to serve you well when you find the next thing to plug into. And it doesn't mean that you have to unplug ATA, right? You can just have multiple plugs going at the same time. But the current version, the current iteration of ATA takes all the juice you've got to feed that one plug. And so you're working with Veronica and others to be able to keep that going and also see where else you can plug in. And that's a wonderful thing.
I might just be doing ATA in 10 years. I mean, I love this business.
I expect you will be, but without it taking everything you've got, every resource you manage, including your time and your attention, so that you can see what are those other things coming by on the bank, and move towards them, when you're ready to. So that sounds like a wonderful plan. And I think that part of there's so many things that go into it. This internet relationships that we forge can be so boundaryless. How do we manage things like a Facebook page, people's anger, people's needs at the moment that won't be served well if we even put them off to the next day? I mean, these are unique demands that no generation has really had to deal with before. And so figuring it out is definitely a mind drain. How can I make the contribution I want to make without being at, literally connected to people by the thousands every minute of every day. Even personally, I used to call my mom every Sunday, and then I didn't hear from her or her from me for the other 6 days of the week. And now my daughters are texting, day and night, and I feel that urge to respond. So we really are entering new territory in terms of being connected to one another, professionally and personally. And it's going to take some careful thought and some courage to find what the boundaries look like nowadays, and then how to implement them without compromising significantly our other goals. So how can I not answer an email within 5 hours? Maybe things like sending back a message saying, thanks for your email. If you don't hear from me in 24 hours, send out the Mounties, And there are things we could be doing, but I can understand that they aren't obvious because no generation has ever lived with this level of connectivity before. Now my students can contact me 24/7. That's a very new level of teacher-student interactivity. So the fact that you're sort of scratching your head about how to make this work and still fulfill other goals is very real for all of us because we don't have the natural impositions that we had in past generations. You hung up that phone, that was it.
It's a big opportunity, I think. I think that, like today, I said to you before we pushed record is Monday because me and wife and Summer and the animals spent the last 2 days together, and it's the first weekend, even though it's a Thursday, Friday, because it's Saturday when we're recording this, that we've had since I've started ATA, and will that unavailability for 48 hours, more than 48 hours, if you count the time of work I finish on Friday to the time I start on Monday, will that negatively impact things? it's for the other goal, it's the lesser of two evils by far, because the urgency that we feel, I think, in contrast to the importance of self-care and being a good husband and a present father, the urgency is always there. The reflection of the importance of those other roles that you play is not always present at front of mind, as is the ding-ding of your phone. What I do know is that if we don't take weekends now, ATA might not be here in 3 years' time.
Right. The cost will be too great. That's right.
Yeah.
Or other potential disastrous costs. I think it can be done. I feel very confident about that. I think it does take time to create the systems that are needed to enable that.
Yeah.
And to also trust that people can do what we do. So there's a certain amount of coming out from behind the curtain, giving up that control. So maybe in my world, a co-instructor in LLA might make a different decision than I would make, but it will produce as good an outcome, even if it's a different outcome. So I can stand back and let that happen. It relates to the leaving the legacy part is, how can you empower the members of ATA to do what you do or achieve the outcomes that you're so carefully watching without you having to watch them and be responsive moment by moment. I think it's completely doable. I think it just takes a combination of creative thinking and trust in people. Yeah. And part of it's communicating with them to let them know that you're taking weekends so they can be part of that.
Yeah, and they appreciate that, I think. I think also 3 years ago, if someone said, well, like, let's go further than that, 6 years ago, if someone was like, oh, you're going to be running a membership, I just would not know what that meant. What does that, what do you, like, it's challenging to kind of tell people what I do. Like, what do you do? I run this membership, we do this, that, and the other. And they're like, is that full time? I'm like, yep. And so I think my view is in 3 years, I have no idea what it's going to look like. But I say I will fail forward until we get there, because
trial and success.
Yeah, you have to courageously let go of, like, I don't know these weekends or what the things we've trained Rose up on at this point in time, or how we're structuring this is going to work, but it's going to give me the information I need to make whatever decision is required to find the thing that does work. So I'm just bravely allowing contingencies to guide the direction, and we'll see what's
and trust in the resilience of the members. Things can go haywire for 24 hours and rise from those ashes on Tuesday, right?
Yeah, it's a journey. When the members know at the moment, I'm asking lots of questions in ATA. I'm putting polls up. I'm saying, how do you feel about this? With no intention of doing any of these things. I'm just like, how would you feel if I did this? How would you feel if I did that? And the results are always surprising to me. I'm always get insights into things. So, like you say, that communication, I don't really change anything without asking. Anything to do with the membership, I try not to change without asking. There's been some ideas where I'm like, that is gonna go gangbusters, and I ask people and they're like, oh no, we do not want that. Or I'm like, people won't want this thing, and they're like, yeah, that's perfect, that's what we want. So I learned very early not to do what I think's right.
Yeah, to get some kind of consultation style from the people who are equally immersed and passionate about it and willing to give you that feedback.
Yeah, so I'm sure I would say the members built the membership. I just kind of facilitated it all. So I'm sure they're going to shape the future as well. And I will play my part and make sure that all of the cogs are turning in the background to push it forward.
I sense that sort of the burden and the glee of you saying, how did I get here? Because I often feel the burden and the glee myself, so I can relate. What cheers you up when you're down?
Summer.
Yeah,
nothing cheers me up like summer. I think recently we've watched some reality television. I share bravely because I found the need to completely disengage in something
Absolutely. I'm with you on that as well.
And so I think rest cheers me up. Food, good food.
Yeah. Do you cook?
I try, but mainly
The joy is in the eating then.
I cooked us a big breakfast yesterday, and then wifey was like, that was what I was meant to do. And so she made me these amazing, we're vegan, and she made me these amazing vegan nachos with this eggplant cheese sauce. I don't even know how she did it. I don't have the motivation to do that, but I enjoy eating it, yeah.
Yeah. When did you decide to be a vegan?
I had dissonance about creating content surrounding welfare and not knowing where the food I was coming from what the food I was eating was coming from.
Yeah.
It was just such a conflicting thought every time I ate dairy or meat that I stopped eating it, and that unpleasant feeling went away. Last night I finished watching a Netflix documentary called Seaspiracy about fishing.
I'll have to watch it. I'll put it on my list.
And I mean, anytime I watch something like that, there's so much I think that we don't know about where our food comes from. Even what that documentary claims is that some of the biggest sustainable fishery labels that you can see on your tin tuna have such big stakes in the fishing industry.
Right.
And so like all of these sustainable and these seals of approval and the cage-free eggs and for me, there's just too much evidence that those things aren't what they appear to be.
Right.
That I can't, unless I know. Like we would eat, like our friends have chickens, we go to their farm, we see the chickens, they're free-run chickens. They seem very happy. They seem like they've got a very good life. Our friends take great care of them. We've got past the point where it's been so long since we ate eggs that we don't really want them anymore. But like we would eat from them, and we have done in the past. But otherwise, I just am very conscious of a feeling I have when I'm unsure about that. And then I sit down and make a podcast about chickens or connect with Terry Ryan and talk about chicken camp.
Yeah.
And I just have a disconnect inside of me, so I just removed that disconnect by stopping my consumption of meat and dairy, and to the best of our abilities, anything animal-related product.
If you were going to interview yourself, what question would you start with?
I would probably think about the question that I get asked the most, saying with the assumption that if I've been asked that question so many times, it's something that people are interested in. So I think people want to know ATA's story.
I figured they could do that on another podcast, and that I would ask the things they didn't know they wanted to know. Who is your hero? Do you have somebody that you'd say is just really a hero? Alive or dead?
My wife, because I watched her give birth to our daughter.
That's some crazy business, right? A ship in a bottle.
Man, I won't go into details because I haven't asked her permission to do that, and it's personal. But I was looking at her when that was happening, and I don't think I've ever been as amazed by what a single human being has done. Obviously, you've given birth, and lots of people have given birth, but I've never watched it, and I've never been as close to another human being as I am my wife, and then seen someone go through that. There were challenges along the way, and it was just like, it was otherworldly and superhuman to watch that whole thing unfold.
And what a prize. Think of the challenges people face and they don't get a baby girl. Right?
Yeah.
It's a demanding planet. What advice would you give your 15-year-old self? What would you wish to have known then from where you are now? What would you tell that 15-year-old boy?
I started reading books that you might find in the self-help section when I was like 13. My dad gave me How to Win Friends and Influence People.
It's a great book.
And so I read that book and I implemented some of the things from it, and I saw results. And I went, oh, cool. I wonder if there's other books like this. And so I read some. And I think I had big personal moment last year where we did some episodes on the growth mindset, and then we had Dr. Afia Fredericks from, I'm going to push the name of the company now, Mindset Works, a company she was working for, helping teach growth mindset to children. And then after the podcast, we read the growth mindset as a community. And David Thatcher, an ATA member, does a fantastic job of running our book club. I just saw a post from him this morning. He wrote something about he's getting back into personal training and about how his trainer said something very growth mindset orientated to him. And he wrote just a personal comment on his own page about the growth mindset. And growing up, even at a young age, I was what I would label as criticised, judged, for wanting to read that kind of content. I felt judged. So it was a great validation for me to be running a business where our customers were on their own back validating my decisions to share that with our audience.
Right. Who want to live those lifestyles where those are important conversations and values.
Yeah, and surround yourself with growth mindset orientated people that can see the value in that. And I think it was detrimental to my confidence as a young man. I felt a little bit different.
Yeah, like an outcast.
Yeah, and just, I mean, those people were always on the planet. I just wasn't surrounded by them. Even to this day, I'm criticised by people that I call close for those decisions. But I don't care anymore. Like, it's like I'm validated.
Right.
Good for you.
That's right.
And so I wish I could share that with 15-year-old Ryan. I think it would have changed the later part of his teens.
Yeah. Well, that's a good one to wrap up with, I think, to tell you that we congratulate you on your 150th podcast. We admire you for all of the thoughts and actions that you've shared with us all this time. And we look forward to seeing whatever comes from you next.
Well, hey, I am. We are each other's antecedents, as Peter Clark recently told me. And something that I share, that I've been sharing a lot, I've already shared with someone today, and you said it to me in jest, but also a great learning opportunity was when we were connected last month or the month before, and Summer climbed up on the couch for the first time, and then she kind of stumbled off, and she tried to climb up again, but there was a blanket in the way, and so I moved the blanket and up she went. And then I said, next time we'll have to get you going with the blanket. And you said to me, Ryan, just celebrate the approximation that's right in front of us right now. And so you are also a constant antecedent in my growth and all of our podcast audience's growth, I feel confident in saying. So thank you for this opportunity to be interviewed by someone who is such a great source of inspiration for myself and for our audience. My pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you as well. As always, we are each other's antecedents and consequences. So, yeah, it's an admiration society, and that's what you're talking about, is surrounding yourselves with people, whether they agree with everything or not. That's not necessary, but we can admire the effort and diligence and care that we all live our lives with, fellow seekers. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'll talk to you again soon, I hope.
We do, of course, really appreciate all of you tuning in today as well. And if you have enjoyed this episode and you were interested in carrying on the conversation about working with our animals in the most positive, funnest, choice-rich ways, then as mentioned at the start of this episode, the Animal Training Academy community is waiting for you. Head on over to www.animaltrainingacademy.com and click on the membership button in the main menu to learn more about what members are describing as the Netflix social media platform for behavior geeks. That's it for this episode though. We're going to wrap it up there. Thanks again so much everyone for listening. You'll hear from us again soon.